wait till I get done, then you can clap. You might be tomatoes, who knows? I'm grateful to be here, grateful to see all of you. Notice I said y'all. We spent some time in Tennessee, and you had to say you all in Tennessee. We got to the grocery store in Tennessee, and we got some groceries, and the clerk said, "You want some help with that buggy?" Buggy, we ain't got no baby. No, your shopping cart. So in Tennessee, they call a shopping cart a buggy. So when you go there, you'll know how to speak the language. You gotta learn how to speak the language in Tennessee. I'll think you're a firm. What we're going to talk about today is the Iron Mission down in Las Vegas. You were all at the fort last year for our banquet. That fort was established by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from 1855 to 1856. Let's show that next slide, could we? Oh, great. We're in trouble now. You all see the slide there. And before I begin, I want to thank Paul and his group. I thought they have done an excellent job on preparations for this conference. Both the schedule, the tours, the program, everything until my part. They've done a wonderful job, and I just think we ought to give a big round of applause. This area is very familiar to me. When I was young, graduate student, I worked on the Comparative Plateau Project, which is up there at Big Water, just across the Arizona-Utah border. I was a graduate assistant as a climatologist, and so we spent much time in this area. I'll tell you a funny story. They put me down at Cottonwood Walk, we go up to Cone Basin, and they took me out to a sit-down bench. And I was supposed to spend 3 weeks alone. And so when they let me off, they left me a case of lettuce. I'm only one person. So a fellow came up in 2 weeks and he said, "We brought you some more food." Guess what he had? Another case of lettuce. I thought, bring me food. And the fellow came up at the end of 3 weeks and he brought me some more food. Guess what? Another case of lettuce. For crying out loud, because he lettuce all the time, bringing meat. So it was a very interesting project. It was so bad, we went over to Bryce Canyon to make a presentation on some of our findings from our studies on this power plant that was going to be put up there. And I got hungry going over. They weren't going to stop, so I stopped, got out a can of Dinning more stew, and wrapped it around my muffler with some baling wire. And opened that can. I was smart enough to open the can, and it'd go for about a half an hour, and I had warm stew. So if you ever need warm stew and you're out in the middle of nowhere, just have some baling wire. It's called warm twine, and all you have to do is just wrap that around your muffler. Now, enough of those stories. I could go on for days, stories on that. And I worked down here with Stan Welch, who was an expert taxonomist. And he taught me a lot about plants and so on. And my wife and I were first married. I'd drive down the highway, and I'd say, "Oh, there's Artemisia triticata, and there's Chrysopramus. I'd name all these plants." She was impressed with the first day. After that, she didn't listen to me. So I stopped pronouncing all the plants things. So this is the fort. Y'all were there last year for our banquet. So Brigham Young, next slide, please. At the general conference, reminders. I like to remind you first. People don't understand dry climates if they come from a humid climate. They just don't. They don't know what it means to be dry. I brought my granddaughter out here, and I showed her the Virgin River around St. George. She says, "Yeah, that's a river? That's not like the Tennessee River." It's just that people don't understand that we live in a dry climate. I mean, it's just dry. And Thaddeus Fox at Utah State pointed this out. Another reminder, Words are best about history when they come from the people who lived the times. That's what's so interesting. When we look at this record, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Church History Library, has a record of the Las Vegas mission. It's 158 pages long, handwritten notes. Almost every day they were down there. It's really a treasure. And it's their words that are speaking to us, not anybody else's, not some interpretation. And it's wonderful. I would encourage all of you, if you can get some records of your ancestors, to just read them. It's wonderful to read how they thought, how they acted, and what they felt about things, without any interpretation. Another point is Las Vegas is the land of extremes. It's hot and it's cold. And it's hot and it's cold. And it rains and it floods. And it rains and it floods. I didn't put up here, but in Las Vegas view, they have a history of the short floods in Las Vegas. And just 30 miles north of Las Vegas, on Highway 95, that goes up to Panac and Del Mar and Alamo, Nevada. You all know where those are, don't you? Yeah, sure. There's a gas station there now, just north of there in 2014, I think it was August or September, they had 6 inches of rain in under 3 hours. It flooded everything out. The highway was washed out, even up to the Muddy River, the California crossing. The highway just got eroded. You could see the films on YouTube, and you see cars coming down the interstate being pushed by the water in the center of the valley. It was really something. So Las Vegas is the land of extremes. I mentioned not to bore you all, but it gets hot, it gets cold, it rains, it floods, and then it doesn't rain. Let's go to the next slide. In 1855, at the General Conference, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has 2 conferences every year, one in April and one in October. And it used to be very interesting. They call missionaries from Stan. They would just they say, John, Joel, you're going here. Sam, you're going here. William, you're going here. So they called 30 missionaries to go to Las Vegas. Now think of that. They had their homes established. What? We're going where? To hell? No, Las Vegas. We're going to Las Vegas. He said, that close to hell? No, you can send out a tuna fish can and see it. So I'm sure there was some surprise, especially from the women. The men were bold. We're ready to go. Sure. So they all got called. John Steele, there's his word right up there. He was a tough guy. His son wrote of him that he feared no man. He was tough. So the journey began in May, and they started. They came down to Parowan. Remember, Parowan was established in 1851. It was part of the settlement of Iron County. And so they already had a settlement there. They had one at Salt Creek, and they're beginning to one at Fillmore. They called Corn Creek. And Parowan, they had a little bit more established, and then there was Cedar City. So down they came in wagons, and they picked up close to the Spanish Trail at Parowan. And then they followed the old Spanish Trail down. And then they arrived at the Muddy. This was interesting because the Indians from Las Vegas, some of them were there. How did they know the Mormons were coming? Indian telegram? I don't know. These were unique people in southern Paiutes. I don't know how they existed in that area. It was just tough living for them. And yet they existed. And people say, why didn't they have horses? You know why they didn't have horses? As Napa explained in the boundaries of the southern Paiutes, because they competed for the same grass they ate in the grass seeds. And so if you had a horse, he ate the same thing you were going to eat. So it was easier to kill a horse and eat it than to have him compete with you for food. This was a tough life these folks lived. But however it worked, the Indian telegraph worked, and they knew the Mormons were coming. So they met them at the Muddy. And you're familiar with the Muddy. Now, I have to tell you a story. Paul told me that if I went over my time limit, he'd need to walk from the Muddy River to Las Vegas by myself in the heat of the day. So somebody raise their hand when I get close. I don't want to walk that distance. So they arrived on the Muddy River in June. Next slide. There we go. And what did I say there? I got to read down on that. Okay, they're going to cross this 52 miles. That is 52 miles. The Spanish called it the journey of death. Well named. I mean, some of you have driven that. There is nothing. When I was a young boy, we drove that area from Muddy down to Las Vegas. But now, there was nothing, but now there's that stop at the Valley of the Fire you get turned off. And then at Highway 95, there's a gas station there before you go to Las Vegas. But before that, there was absolutely nothing. I mean nothing. And that was 52 miles of nothing. The folks on the old Spanish Trail had to face that too. I just can't imagine it. And yet the Indians came from the Las Vegas area up there to see the Mormons. What? They just stepped out and walked. I can't do that. So when they got there, what they normally did, they sent wagons ahead, the stronger teams ahead. They got to Vegas to the meadows, got the water, and came back to help the other wagons that were coming. So they arrived down in Las Vegas. Let's see the next slide here. Early activities. What do you think some of the first early activities would be? Under Brigham Young, he wanted a fort. So they laid out a fort. Now, the slide we showed you of the fort doesn't do justice. The fort was only 150 foot square. They needed that for protection. They also had to establish acreage, garden spots, acreage to grow land. In just a few minutes, we'll show you some of those lines. So these are all the things, these are all the things you normally do. You're going to have food, because guess what? There was no grocery store in Las Vegas of the meadows. Now, I hope all of you sometimes get a chance to watch reality TV. You know this show, The Last Frontier? They show the kids for family in it. Gotta get food for the winter or they're gonna die. They're only 12 miles from home in Alaska and there's a grocery store there. No, that's not the way it was. When you got to Las Vegas, it was not 12 miles. 12 miles wouldn't get you anywhere. So they were there and they had to establish themselves. So immediately they put off garden plots, they started surveying land to grow corn, grow wheat, and they started exploring the area. Guess what one of the things they would need? Timber. And there ain't no timber in Las Vegas. It just doesn't exist. So they have to talk to the Indians. So they're meeting with these Indians, talking to them, and the Indians are trying to tell them about these things. That's what you do. We talked about the Dominguez Escalante expedition. They enlisted the help of the Indians. They knew what was going on. They knew the country. So they knew where timber was at, and they knew where water was because they were at the Las Vegas Springs. Now, it's sad to say about the Las Vegas Springs. It was a source of water for a number of years. But everybody moved to Las Vegas and they started pumping the water. And so it drew down the springs. So the springs don't exist anymore. Matter of fact, the springs used to run right to the fort. There was a stream that ran down to the fort. Okay. Now, this last bullet here. From this experiment that Brigham Young had going, or that his work, he sent down the missionaries from Salt Lake City to establish an Indian mission in southern Utah. Juanita Brooks wrote extensively about this. So their job was to try to help civilize the Indians, or what they thought would be to civilize the Indians. And they established the center of Santa Clara, Utah. They built homes, taught them how to grow things, crops, etc. So as part of this effort, Brigham Young sent a letter down to them and said, go down to explore the Colorado River for me, would you? I'm sending down some people to Las Vegas. Okay, we'll go. Now, Brigham Young and some people kind of make fun of him, said, oh, everybody knew you couldn't float in the Colorado River. Well, the government tried it. They even brought steamships up with the Gulf of California to see how far they could go up the Colorado River, because it would have been an easy way to get supplies up. So Brigham Young sent a group down to explore this area. So when they met up at the Mighty River, they went down to Las Vegas, and then they established an exploration of the Colorado River. And they almost died getting there. How close is Las Vegas to the Colorado River? It's about 25 miles through hell. And that's in the good time of the year. And before this time, remember, there was no dam or anything like that. There was just the gorge. So they had to get down the gorge. They tried to get down the gorge. They could not get down the gorge. The heat was unbearable. Now notice this is June, the cool part in Vegas. Yeah, sure. This is June and July as they're doing this. They had to be nuts. I'd say, boys, let's wait till November or something. They went down in July. It was hot. They almost all died just coming back. They didn't get down to the river. They just said the river's deep down here. And back they got. So it's kind of interesting, this whole story. It's kind of almost like, oh, what they call those old-time cops. I can't think of the name. Yeah, you know, it was just like that. They tried these things, and a lot of them didn't work out. I'm not trying to be critical of them. It's just I don't think they understood how hot it was in Las Vegas. And I don't think the Indians could communicate that to them. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, you can see what they're starting to do here. Now, this is interesting because Brown actually did a map of the area. This is one of the earliest maps we have of Las Vegas. Let's go to the next slide. There's the map. Now, I forgot to tell you, I've got a handout here, right here on the bottom, on the top of this podium, that has this letter in it and this map. And I've transcribed the legend. So you can all come up and get a copy. I've got some other letters in there. But this is the first map that I know of that shows the Las Vegas Valley. I don't know of any other. And this is housed in the Church History Library. And I've also given a reference. You can go online, and that map is digitally available to you. Now, when you go to the Church History Library, it doesn't matter if you're a member of the church or not. You can get access to these documents. And so I've given the actual call number. Now, when you put the call number in, if it says 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a space, 6, make sure you have a space there. And if you're looking for anything there, make sure you spell things correctly, or it won't find them for you. So this is the earliest map I know of Las Vegas, and you can see right in the center, Fort Complex, there. Now what's interesting is they describe some of the vegetation. How many of you know what mesquite is? I think that's Propis, P-R-O-P-O-I-S, for my days in botany. But anyways, guess what it has? Thorns. And they had to clear that without any gloves. I haven't read any journal where they had a glove. So they probably had to cut that down and be careful. So these maps are very interesting. It shows the spring that comes, the stream that comes from the springs down to the fort. So there's actually a stream right at the fort. Extensive plant there to stop there. So they had consent. So that's interesting. I can say that's the only map I know, and this was in 1856 that they had this. So this was done by Thomas C. Brown. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Where am I at on time? I'm afraid Paul will fulfill his promise to me.
You're good.
We're good? Okay, I stop it, don't question me, Paul. So, here's George W. B's letter. And what these are is just letters telling what's going on, the activity. The mountains are about 40 miles away. And these are their actual words. These are not by any historian or by me. These are just actually in the records. Now, what I've done is transcribe this 158 pages of the mission records. I've also transcribed all the letters that were associated, that were sent back and forth. There's some 50 letters that were sent back and forth. Just like this one from Dalton Brown that showed the map. And also articles of the Deseret News. What I have done is transcribe all of those. I must be a fool. I am sometimes. I plan to do an index. You can't have a record without an index. Historians will tell you that, and they say an index can never be too long. So my next effort is to make an index for all these records and put them in a book and get it published. And then I'll give all those copies to the Old Spanish Trail Association and make them sell them, and make money. But I don't think I'll be done with that till about January next year. It does take me a little time to transcribe it anymore. I'm not as quick as I used to be. Okay, we're still with George Bean. He's writing about this. The mountains are 40 miles away and there's snow. In June? Well, I've got to transcribe what he said. Let's go to the next slide. Now here's William Brinkhurst. Typically, when these settlements were settled, and under Brigham Young, there were about 400 settlements. He established 400 settlements. Some of those you may know: Cedar City, Parowan, St. George, Santa Clara, Washington, Canal. We might have established Canal. But there were all these settlements under Brigham Young. Sorry, I've had a stroke. Sometimes I slur my words. My therapist says, talk slowly. Okay, Doc. So I'm going to talk slowly. So Brigham Young was establishing settlements, and he's in the president now with 2 counselors. And they kind of be in charge of the operation. And official correspondence would go between Brigham Young and the president. So in this case, it was William Brinkhurst, who was the president of the Las Vegas mission. And so he was the one that kind of directed the affairs of the mission. But geez, here they are in the middle of nowhere. I just can't imagine this. The Indians, they understood it. I don't know if they did too. So you can see, and I'm not going to read it to you. I went to a slide presentation course one time, and I said, don't read the slides. You'll assume that people are illiterate. I know you're not illiterate, so I'm not going to read it to you. I don't want you to throw anything at me. So here's a few points. Like I said, these are actual words. That's what's interesting about it. And I should say too, I'm going to put in a pitch for family history. Your children will be interested in your own words. You may chuckle about that, but there'll be a time where your children will love to read what you have to say. It really will happen. I just enjoy reading these stories about these people, and I'm not even related to them. Your children will love if you write your own history. They'll just love it. And they say, Mom wore that? Mom acted like that? Your dad was dressed like that? They'll enjoy it. It'll bring them joy. Just as these records of these people bring us joy. I mean, I can't imagine living in Las Vegas with no air conditioning. None. Zero. No swamp cooler. How do they do it? I mean, we can't even drive in our car without an air conditioner in Las Vegas. And they just lived day by day. And they were tougher than I am. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. Now, they had this interaction with the Indians. And the Paiutes are different from everybody else, especially the Southern Paiutes. They were not bothered by the Army. The Army didn't have any campaigns against them. There was no major battles with the Paiutes. They were more friendly than most tribes. Maybe it's just because of where they lived. But the Army and the United States government just didn't bother them. And so I guess they got along peacefully down that way. Even though there were some cases of bad travel, which there always is. You could read in those accounts, which were hard on the Indians. The Indians didn't deserve to be treated by some of the travelers like they did. It just wasn't right. So in essence, they were a very friendly people, and they got along well with a lot of their saints. Matter of fact, a number of them were baptized. A number of their chiefs and their leaders were very good men. They didn't want trouble. They tried to avoid it with the fights. They tried to live with them. Now, there's a lot said back and forth about the Latter Saints of the Indians. There was just a book written about, I think it was by Bagley, that the whites had everything and the Indians had nothing. Yeah, I guess that happened, but not in Las Vegas. I think both of them are on the brink of life. They really were. And both of them are competing in some way for the same resources. But the Indians also loved the Latter-day Saints because guess what they grew? Melons. And guess what Indians love? Melons. And you know why they loved them? Because they were easy to break open and eat. And if you're in a desert environment, you don't want a walnut. No, don't give me a walnut. Don't give me a coconut. What do they want? A melon. They could break that melon open and eat it without any problem at all. So there was a constant struggle with growing melon and Indians taking them. And yet, Brigham Young tried to tell people, relax. They come from a different world than you do. Just try to be patient with them. Be honest with them. Make sure they know you're a friend and you want to do good for them. And that's what we read in a lot of these letters, this interaction. Brigham Young tried to have peace with them. I understand they're going to steal some melon. Oh, by the way, it was a case of Parowan where a good letter to say was stealing melon, thought it was Table's garden, and he got excommunicated from the church. Yep. They didn't excommunicate Indians, but Brigham Young just said, be patient with them. He didn't say they love melons, but he said be patient with them. So I guess if you've never seen melons before and they were there, it was a treat for the Indians. And like I said that last one, keep all your promises, contracts. Be honest with them. Don't take advantage of them. I know there's a lot said about Indian relations and Latter-day Saints, but that's a letter from Brigham Young and the Stone Record. Be kind to them. Okay, let's go to the next slide. That's still in August. Oh, here's a report on crops. Now, crops grew well because of the heat. and they had the water source. But now you think if you're a bug down there, and you're floating, flying around or crawling around, and you say, whoa, there's green, there's food. Guess what? You're heading for those crops. They had a terrible time with bugs. I didn't put this in a lot of cases, but they had good crops, but they had a terrible time because bugs would come after the corn worms. You know, they just, and like I say, if you're a bug and you're living down there and suddenly you see all this delicious plant life, I tell you what you're going to do. You're not going to leave. You're going to eat it. So they loved it. Even to talk about roasting here by the 25th of June, they grew quick down here. Things do grow quick in Las Vegas. They tried to grow potatoes. They tried to grow peas. They tried to grow grapes. They tried to do everything they could. Matter of fact, I don't show up here, but they went to California and got grapevines and brought them back. So they were trying to do anything to sustain themselves. Let's go to the next slide here. Oh, now, in October, John Steele, who I mentioned a little bit the first, wrote about him going, guess what he did? He gave us a map again of Las Vegas. You could see the fort laid out, the old slide down the 5s, the California Road coming down. That's what they called it, by the way. They didn't call it the old Spanish Trail. They called it the California Road. But you could see, and once again, you have it in that packet, and I've transcribed the legend for you. But that's kind of a nice map of the area for that time. So that's the second map that was done. That was done in October. The first one was done in June. This was done in October. Now even better, let's go to the next slide. He drew the layout of the fort. With the garden spot, with the crop area, with the street, with the corral, with the fort, with the other buildings. So we actually have this. And once again, this is available at the Church History Library. In that packet, we show that, and we'll also give you the call number for this. So these are two valuable resources for the history of the Las Vegas area. Actual maps that were done. Now that's what we've done just a couple months after they arrived. But here it is. And like I say, if you want to see that, you gotta go to the church history site. You don't have to put a password or anything. You can enter into it, just hit in the correct call number, and you can go to it. Now, he kind of wrote that upside down, but I didn't try to do it, show it to you in all the different formats, but it gives you an idea. So this is in October. Let's go to the next slide. Aha, now we finished 1855. They survived the first, from June to December. And now the old days going official because, well, guess what? They get a post office. That was important in the early days to have a post office and a postmaster. And now I haven't entered this in, but I'll tell you, there was a regular mail service from Salt Lake to San Bernardino, California. As you remember, in 1851, the Mormons settled San Bernardino, California, and established a community. So they were mail carriers who went on a regular basis, about every 6 weeks, back and forth. One of them names was Savage. Can't imagine. You leave Salt Lake, and 6 months later, you arrive in San Bernardino. You leave, and 6 weeks later, you arrive in Salt Lake City. You stay home for a couple of days, and you'd be doing it all over again. These guys were tough. They really were. And so that was the only way people had mail. From Salt Lake City and San Bernardino with these mail carriers. I've also thought about writing the history of them. Okay, what's this? They returned from Salt Lake City. Well, I can't read that, that's all right. Oh, they bought a thermometer. The third book, they finally had a thermometer so they could tell what the temperature was. Look at that, 19 degrees. You don't go to Las Vegas so the temperature could be 19 degrees. You just don't. I mean, maybe you're dumb when you go, but you go to Las Vegas when it's warm. In the spring and in the fall especially. And then there were additional missionaries that came. Let's see, this next slide should, let's see the next slide. Now, Brigham Young all the time, whenever there was a settlement, wanted everybody to look out at the resources. What resources are there? Timber, water, minerals, etc., etc. Just southwest of Las Vegas, out towards Pahrump, there's a mountain, and they found lead. So Brigham Young, because you use lead for all kinds of things in pioneer days, typeset especially. So Brigham Young wanted to go out and explore that area for lead. Now, there's only one problem with that. You know what you need to smelt lead? Water. Because you want to wash the water away, if the impurities away. Because if you start smelting lead with all the impurities, guess what you get? Nothing. It just burns away. So what you want to actually have is the lead ore. So they weren't too successful, but Brigham Young wanted them to look for that. They sent some samples up to Salt Lake City and Atlanta. It actually weren't too bad. But all the time, Brigham Young was pushing them. What resources are in the area? Especially timber and minerals. And Nathaniel B. Jones was called on to operate the lead operation. And now on July 13th, this is the middle of the year, about 18 months, well, about a year there, guess what they have? Scarcity of provision. Well, duh. When you get that, when the Indians eating, with the bugs eating, with the bad weather, you don't get much. I mean, Las Vegas is not known as an agricultural area. Now, further up in Wapa on the Muddy River, yeah, they grow a lot of feed up there. They have dairy farms. But Las Vegas is, you know, you don't buy Las Vegas carrots, or Las Vegas onions, or Las Vegas potatoes. Just doesn't happen. I don't know. I never see any Las Vegas signs on a 5-pound bag of plants. It's just the soil's bad, it's hot, it's dry, and what water you can get does help, but it's just not the ideal place. So they've been here a year, and now they say, oh, guess what? We got a little problem now. And they didn't have a lot of cattle, because just think, there's not much feed for cattle or horses in this country. They brought mules up from California, but where's the feed? How are you going to keep them alive and working, especially for hauling lead ore, or you're doing all this hauling timber? It was tough on men, it was tough on livestock. And by the way, there were some women down there too, but they're mental. I just can't imagine how tough they have to be. Now, not one of them wrote a letter complaining about the situation. They were just tough. I searched and searched and searched for letters, and there was not one woman that wrote a letter, and not one woman I know that complained. And it was tough. I mean, those gals had to be tough. So, you're not the fair sex in a great sense. I mean, these sisters, these women were tough. They just dug right in and did the work right along their husbands and never complained. I'm just amazed by their ability. Now, where are we at? We're 1850. Oh, no food. Well, we're even better off. We had lunch today. That was pretty good, by the way. Thanks, Bob. I hope you didn't take that out of your own pocket. No, over there. I'm glad somebody paid for it. It was dang good. Okay, the left line operation, are trying to get that going. Now, this is a group of Indians that Nat mentioned in her book on the Southern Pipes. There were Ats or Lats. I don't know where they came from. They just came into the fort one day. Don't know how they found out about that. They just showed up. It stayed a couple of days and moved on. That's just the nature of the country down there. So here's some other things that are happening in 1856. Just the normal things you would expect, but these are their own words. Oh yeah, they even tried growing cotton. Regular water to grow cotton, so they tried that. Now this is 1857. I want you to read that last comment. In February, they end the Brigham Young releases. Notice what he says. You haven't added any honey to the hive, so get out of there. And people say Brigham Young didn't have humor. I just thought that was neat. You've not added any honey to the hive. And I thought, ooh, I read that and I thought, I wonder if I've added any honey to the hive. That would be a pointed comment. So they ended, it was just too tough. The Indians started to get after them. There was no food. They tried to bring down cattle from Cedar City. It was just a taxing time. And Brigham Young finally said, we're done. But the amazing thing is that Morgan still traveled over the California Trail, and that was the old Spanish Trail from Paraguay on down. So the Spanish Trail, even in Mormon history, looms large. I know officially the trail ended in 1848 according to the National Historic Register of Trails, all the big words. But its history goes on and on. It just does. It's not past tense when we speak of the trail. And when they say it's a national significance, sure it was. Because people were there. And people settled the area. And people settled and moved there with their family. They didn't see, but yet they were there. And they followed the trail. The trail, I guess, was a lifeblood for a lot of people. A lot of Latter-day Saints, it was a quarter from Latter-day Saints from Salt Lake down to the Pacific Coast. So it's not dead. So I think I take issue when they speak about that being national importance. It's important. If you think it's important, it's important. Well, I hope you enjoyed those remarks. I'm sorry. I had a stroke a couple of years ago, and so I'm not normal. Of course, nobody ever could have been normal anyway. So I just less normal than normal. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. If